So again, I'm Scott Howard, Earthen Hand Natural Building, and this presentation is about my past and current works with bioarchitecture and natural building. I'm a bioarchitect, an artisan, and educator. My website is earthenhand.com. So yeah, I started realizing that Adobe was a viable option only at the age of 18 or 19. I was in college. Rob Bowman from Eugene came through. He gave a presentation at my college, and I realized that the solution should be everywhere, and it was something that I wanted to spend my life doing. So I immediately took a workshop from Cobb Cottage Company and started building Cobb homes in Oregon, where I'm from. And I realized that the adobe, the earthen materials are the oldest materials known to man, right up there with stone. And some of the oldest remaining buildings from history are adobe buildings, like the Ramesseum you see here in the lower right corner. This is a vault in Egypt that has been standing for over 3,000 years. It's a 9-layer thick adobe brick vault. Then you have some of the oldest inhabited settlements in the Americas, for example, like Taos Pueblo, you see there in the upper left. That is a type of adobe apartment house that they just keep fixing it and adding on rooms, and it's been around for thousands of years, and they've been living in that same place. In this particular case, it's made of puddle adobe or cob. That's a mixing of sand and clay and straw into a paste and applied in situ, rather than making the bricks and letting them dry out and stacking them with a mud mortar. This whole presentation is really just dedicated to those who came before, our ancestors and the earth, the animals. You see our animal friends here, the dog and orangutan, and really all the people. You know, this adobe, the mud material is something that the earth has given us. It's for all the people, and our ancestors have used it for thousands and thousands of years. It's just such a beautiful thing. So of course we need to continue using it, right? So I threw this little meme in here. You know, the guy's like, "Are these the end times?" And he's like, "Well, that depends. Are you good at gardening and working with others?" So we talk a lot about fractality in nature. Bioarchitecture is really working with mimicking the patterns in nature, the fractal nature. The structures are following particular energy pathways. So you see those same structures on the micro level and on the macro level, and the way that energy flows, we're able to work with the charge, the capacitance, and try to recreate that same experience that you would have on a beautiful beach or at a sunrise or a sunset. We want to create that in our homes and have that healthful property on a day-to-day basis. So, and this is also dedicated to my students. That's you guys. And just remembering that, you know, in our learning process, we're definitely going to make a lot of mistakes. If you've ever made a mistake, I've made thousands of, you just got to be like Bob Ross. Just see those mistakes and just turn them into something beautiful. So yeah, being inspired by nature, I mean, something as simple as this wasp nest on the side of the plywood here. The wasp using the mud, they're constructing the most efficient shape that is possible with the least material. So it's the strongest shape with the least material. The form is following the function. All the animals are definitely very tuned in. They're in complete harmony with the materials and their surroundings. I've always been inspired by this type of thing at a very young age, and I learned about the works of Antonio Gaudí when I was studying abroad in Spain in college, and really is an excellent example of, you know, not only beauty but the function and the form, using biomimicry to create something that's durable and long lasting. So yeah, before I got into earthen building, I was into ceramics, and I have been, since that time. From a very young age, I love ceramics, and these are just a few of my works. So you see the inspiration from Antonio Gaudi's work, obviously the colorful tiles here. So yeah, this is actually a ceramic skin covered earthen oven that I created. It was a very unique project. I'm building the main ceramic skin piece, that's this larger piece. I'm building it on top of a inflated yoga ball. So this is a little bit of foreshadowing to later in my career, like right now where I'm working with airforms and some of these alternative cements. So yeah, I did a whole variety of projects all around Portland, Oregon, where I'm from. I worked with the City Repair Project and the Village Building Convergence, and did a lot of different installations like this one here at the Portland State University that I designed and built with the community. This is actually a wood carving I did, and this is the logo for my company, Earthen Hand. It's the four moons. It represents the four directions, like we talked about, the four wave mixing, the four seasons. It represents wholeness and earth. Yeah, here's a sketch I did of an intersection repair back when I was working with the City Repair Project in the early 2000s, doing community organizing and natural building to improve the city. We had amazing results. What Mark Wakeman and the City Repair Project and Village Building Convergence achieved was received around the world and repeated because crime rates went down, traffic speeds went down, overall quality of life was way up. And so eventually, not immediately, the city of Portland approved of what we did, and it became very popular, and it's still ongoing today. So yeah, I've taught at least a couple of workshops every year since 2002, I believe. I've been in a lot of different countries, a few different states. I just had a really good time getting out there in the world, learning different techniques and sharing different natural building methods with folks. Some of my international workshops were really quite the cross-cultural experience. So this on the upper left here, this is in Mali, a little schoolhouse that I did there in a small village called Tireli. This is one of my students, Bob, at a local workshop here in Oregon. And here we are in Rwanda, mixing up some mud, a project I did there. And here's a very small Earthbag dome that I built in Puerto Rico. So more shots of my students having a good time. This is going to be you guys in a couple of weeks. We're going to be out there building. And yeah, and here's my lovely partner, Michelle, who's also a holistic health consultant and vegan chef. She's helping me with the cob construction recently, and we had a great time. So everybody gets a lot out of working with the cob. I think it's one of the most accessible materials. It's kind of like the gateway to natural building, right? And even the little kids can do something or feel that they're contributing by mixing up a few batches. There's nothing quite like a bunch of little kids all blissed out dancing in the wet mud. And a group of kids dancing around in wet mud can have wonderful effects on the surrounding environment in terms of the energy, and has even been known to cause rainfall, even in dry areas. So yeah, cob is my first love, and seemed the most natural coming out of ceramics and my sculpture background, to just get into, well, what if we sculpted houses? What if we created architectural sculptures or sculptural architecture? And why isn't all architecture art? I also studied stained glass construction, and these are just a few of my works. I really reserve this only for special buildings that I work on, and I saw a vision for a particular stained glass window that needed to go into a building I designed, and so I built a window. So it's really just been a few windows here and there, but I enjoy doing it. And yeah, so I got my start at the first location where I took the workshop with Cobb Cottage Company. that was in Philomath, Oregon, and I built a couple of different rather large cob homes. One of them is a meeting house, and the other one was more of a house. Really got a lot of experience with those projects. And then we moved on. Here we are in New Mexico. Me and my friends were just out there playing with Adobe bricks and building a little hut out in the desert in New Mexico. You see, we're installing a car door into the side of the Adobe, which was pretty fun, and you could roll down the window. So here's that first cob meeting house that I built. Huge community effort, obviously, and had a lot of help with the plasters and the roof. So I think it was the year after that, somewhere in there, I went down to Presidio, Texas, and I studied with Simone Swan of the Adobe Alliance. The Adobe Alliance is the direct inheritor of the teaching and knowledge from Hassan Fatih, who's a famous architect who wrote the book called Architecture for the Poor. They were able to build this woodless architecture using only Adobe bricks and construct on a large scale, pretty big developments, mostly in North Africa. So these buildings that you see that I helped to build at the Adobe Alliance in Texas are that same design. And you see here in the lower right, this is the technique that's known as the Nubian vault technique. Going back to that first slide of the Ramesseum, this is the same method. So this method is thousands of years old, and it's very effective. Does not require the use of forms. We put the strings up to guide the work, and it's a catenary vault, catenary arch. So that means that it's essentially the inverse shape of gravity. Like if you hang a chain and then you flip that curve right side up, that's the catenary arch, and it's very strong shape. So yeah, just a couple more shots of teaching. Here I am assisting with the permaculture design certification course in India, and a whole bunch of different bench installations that I've done, sculptural benches in Portland, Oregon, a lot of different schools, a lot of kids, having a great time helping me build these. This is a giant salamander bench here. There's the frog. And then there was a flagship project pretty early on, I think 2002, 2003. I built this, we call it Ananda Grita. That's the Bliss House at the New Day School in Portland, Oregon. It's a preschool, and Ananda Marga and Waldorf Philosophy Preschool. So it fit right in. This building was designed to be a meditation and prayer space, and they would do kind of like a kirtan type meetings, a lot of singing and chanting Baba Nam Kevalam inside this building. And it really turned out beautifully. And you notice the bottle wall here. And this building is all cob with a living roof that uses a EPDM onliner. So this is partly my design, done with the group design process. And it kind of reminds me of, one of my most recent projects is a little cob shed for a friend of mine here in North Portland. We built this little cob shed, turned out wonderfully, had a wonderful time, and a variety of other projects over the years, a straw clay shed, a straw bale. This is a load bearing straw bale shed that I built. So I really wanted to kind of get my hands on every different type of natural building method and see which one I liked the most. So I tried a lot of different things, Again, here's Puerto Rico. We did an Earthbag dome there. For a long time, I was kind of the cob guy, and then I became known as the Earthbag guy because Earthbag domes were sort of the hot topic for quite a number of years, and it was really fun. I really enjoy using the geometry of the dome. You see, we're using a sail compass here in the middle of it. A couple more projects in town. At another school, I did some plasters and earthen paints, put on a roof. This was an interesting project at my buddy Josh's house in Portland. We actually did what we call faux adobe. So this is a standard stick-built little hut, and it has plywood on it. But then we plastered over the plywood with an adobe and sealed up the adobe with sodium silicate. And so it ends up having a cob home look to it. We did that together years and years ago, and he's been renting this out very successfully. And yeah, here's a little cob shed. This is also just at the outskirts of Portland. This is sorry, it's Earthbag, covered with a cob plaster. And there's again a living roof, again EPDM liner. All these materials are pretty much locally based materials, except for maybe the bags that we used to hold the material and the EPDM. So we got all this wood from very nearby the building site. That's kind of the theme. And yeah, at some point we went to Thailand and built this sound meditation dome. At the time that I built this, this was one of the largest Earthbag domes in the world at 23 feet. And it was a really rewarding project, amazing group of students. It took us 8 weeks. It was in a place called Koh Phangan. It's a very beautiful small island in South Thailand. And it was at a place called the Pyramid Yoga Center. See, everybody's having a good time here. The beautiful Thai weather. So you see the barbed wire there in the wall. That's kind of what holds it together. And again, all soil from the building site. Here's some of my design work I've done over the years, with some other collaborators and a variety of clients. This is a cross section of a sauna, and then some different views of different homes. So at some point, I realized I kind of wanted to distill my goals into a single design that could be improved on over time and would represent what I'm trying to do in the world. So I started to call this particular design that I did in Spring, Washington, I called it the Regenerative Home Prototype. So this was the first version of the regenerative home that I created. And I recorded the entire process in video. And I made a nice video documentary about it. You should check it out on YouTube. It's really very thorough, so you can see the whole process. But what this is it's the regenerative home design principles applied to this location, right? So it has a wooden roof because we're in the Pacific Northwest, and we could get a variety of wood products. A lot of these are repurposed beams from old barns, and some of them are trees taken from the site. Yeah, this particular type of Earthbag construction is hyper adobe, so it's a little different than what you saw in the previous slide. This one has no barbed wire, and the sand and clay kind of ooze out from the holes in the bag, and it sticks together the layers. We also pinned every bag to the bags below it with these 1/4-inch diameter bamboo pins. So we'd hammer in the bamboo, and we soak the bamboo in a borax solution. Here you see we're using the excavator to do some mixing. That really saved a lot of work. But even on the first projects that I did, the very first cob homes that I showed you, we used a bobcat. And we'd mix up 60 yards of cob in one day. Another unique thing about this particular design of the regenerative home prototype, number one, is we attempted to do what's known as a passive annual heat storage. That would mean that by insulating and covering the earthworm around the back of the building, keeping all that earth dry, we were able to get a small insulative value out of that earth material. And even over time, the earth material can charge up. So in the summertime, it would be slowly charging all that mass. And then over the wintertime, that mass will release a little bit of heat. So it's the thermal flywheel, the thermal mass effect, but instead of a daytime cycle, which is what we normally talk about in passive solar design, this is focused on creating an annual cycle of thermal flywheel. So it did work reasonably well, but I think at this particular site, the water table was a little bit higher than we anticipated. So because of that moisture, it didn't work as well as we'd hoped. Although there is a home that's really near this project. A guy built a passive annual heat storage home that's just a conventional looking home, but he put the underground plastic umbrella and insulation and everything. his project worked perfectly because he was on top of a hill, and because of what he did, his home needs no heating or cooling ever. It's not because of the insulation in his walls or roof, it's because of the mast. So that's interesting. And then we arrive at the regenerative home prototype number 2, which is really the main one at this point, the main design that I'm continuing to move on. Essentially what happened is I went to study with Earthship Bioarchitecture. I did the internship just to understand what they were talking about. And I loved their systems, but I just couldn't get down with the way they were creating the structure of the house. So I immediately redesigned the structure in such a way where it's somewhat similar. You still have the entryway greenhouse, the 2 layers of glass, but the regenerative home is 95 to 98% adobe. We're using the hyper adobe bag method, so it's a rammed earth essentially, and then there's a Nubian vault on top of that, and the whole thing is capped with a ferro cement skin. So this is designed to actually regenerate the landscape, collect water, produce power, produce food, need almost no heating or cooling, and generally be in harmony with the landscape. You see in the lower left here is a sketch that I did to show that even though this prototype is only 400 square feet, you can tessellate this design side by side as many times as you want. You can make a long, skinny building that still has great solar gain. And this particular design is really fitting for a place like Colorado where we built this. It's dry, it's sunny, and there are extreme temperature fluctuations between day and night. So all that extra thermal mass really makes a big difference, and the extra layer of glass. So there's also a video about the regenerative home prototype, this particular version on YouTube, that shows all the details of the construction process. And again, a Nubian vault technique. You see here, we're doing that. It's in the lower right. Here are the design drawings that we pretty much built it from these drawings here. There's the gray water and the black water processing cells. They're inside the entryway greenhouse. There's a shower. Everything kind of packed in tightly like a tiny house. Some food production indoors and outdoors. A couple of different versions. This original version, I had the back of the vault as a curving shape. It was a little more complex to achieve, so we decided to make it straight. It's a lot simpler. So again, yeah, a lot of gratitude to Mike Reynolds and Earthship Bioarchitecture for everything we've done over 40 plus years. And this is, in a lot of ways, really inspired by that and designed for that same climate. Here I am with my friend Josh at Earthship Bioarchitecture building simple survival Earthship pod. A lot of ferro cement and a lot of cans and bottles and a lot of tires. But I much more enjoyed the Adobe building process of the regenerative home. It was the happy crew of that particular project. We did a number of workshops and really good time. Actually, this guy right here, Luke Trotman, after taking some workshops from me, he went on to start a natural building company called Woven Earth. And he was wildly successful and did a lot of really amazing projects in Nepal, especially after the big earthquake. Again, the simple survival Earthship, and then this is the Phoenix Earthship, a really large. I just love the greenhouse spaces. I like hanging out in spaces with a lot of plants and a lot of light, and so that's kind of a theme that keeps showing up in my designs. This is an Earthbag dome, about 16 or 17 feet, that I built in Mali. Nice adobe plasters here. We covered the roof with some flagstones. I did a couple projects in Jamaica. This is designed to be very affordable, very simple to achieve, a small home for 1 or 2 people. And yeah, another project in Jamaica, a rectangular building that I was consulting on. Another project in Jamaica, working with my friend Zane from Vibes International. Yeah, so here's a bench. A couple benches I didn't show you yet. Really fun to build that stuff. Oh, here's a project we did at a local Oregon education center. This is a reciprocal roof made of timbers. So that's where every beam rests on the next beam. So you start the first beam, you put a post up, and you got to hold that first one up, right? And then you rest every other beam on that. So you get all the way around, and you slip the last one in there, and then you can take that post that's in the middle, you can take that out once you pin them all together. And some other carpentry projects. Here's another living roof I did at a local preschool. Some other projects here locally in Portland. These nice cob columns. These held up so well. My own proprietary blend of oils that I put over the earth and plaster. It has needed no maintenance for over 20 years, and it's really incredible. So then at some point, I decided to try out a simpler way of living, and I built this little box. It was originally going to be my tool storage box, but then I changed my mind and decided to just live in it. And I had this little tiny house on a little trailer, and I lived at a few different pieces of land belonging to some friends, and moved around a few times over a few years, and had a really good time experimenting, with basic needs and my lifestyle. And here's a raised bed that I built, and then here's a wood-fired hot tub that I built using a stainless steel coil from an old industrial air conditioning unit. It's a very interesting process to work with, temporary design and design for disassembly, reassembly. So then I bought this house at the Oregon coast and really just went for it full on. I started building a lot of outbuildings. Here's a sort of a greenhouse-esque outbuilding that I created that was actually kind of a shop type building and garage. And then I did a bunch of tempered glass roofs all over the property around the house here, several tempered glass roofs. This is a method that I learned from my friend, the late and great Sunray Kelly, an amazing natural builder. You should definitely check out his work. And he showed me that you could take these repurposed tempered glass sliding door panels and put them onto the beams. Then we put a piece of builder's tape over the juncture between the two panels. And then we sandwich the whole thing down with a 1x4 and screw it down. So it's an amazing technique because it's very easy to do. It's fast, it's waterproof, and you get these wonderful clear roofs that let a lot of light through. It's perfect for this location in the forest. So yeah, just experimenting with permaculture design and appropriate technology. Had a lot of food growing. Here's my bees on the roof, some honeybees, and it was really fun building this pass through. Where there was a rotted section in the roof, I just cut it out and I ended up building a pass through so you could climb out this ladder onto the roof. And it was like a pirate ship. Here's the tempered glass roof. I just think this repurposed glass is one of the greatest resources, and I would definitely use this method again in any applicable scenario. Some of my gardens, I was growing some Pinstrafaria mushrooms and a lot of vegetables, a lot of wild foraging. A few more shots of some of my drawings that I've done over the years. And there's a house I was working on this summer for some folks. And, over the years, I worked in a lot of different trades. I worked as a stonemason and as a carpenter, framing, finished carpentry. I did flooring, whole variety of things. Yeah, and here's some plastering projects. I did a whole variety of plastering projects. This shot of me in the middle, I'm actually prepping to do a Cadillac finish in the bathroom. That's a super smooth burnished lime plaster finish that's pretty much waterproof. And this pink plaster you see on either side, that's another project I did. That's just interior lime plasters. Most of my projects have actually been earth plasters, but a few times I've done some lime plaster as well. And I have a lime plastering gig coming up next week. Do a whole variety of earthen floors, sometimes pretty fancy ones in like fancy homes, like this one you see here. Here's earthen floor installation process at one of the Earthbag buildings that I showed you. I was invited to Rwanda to assist with a project there through Stanford University, and actually help them invent a way to create a rapid installation of a rammed earth floor system. So instead of a wet floor, we put in very dry, sand and clay mix with just a little bit of moisture, and then we compress it down with the boards and hammers. The plastic is to keep the earth from sticking to the board. And then, like I mentioned, I was in Asia helping with some permaculture courses with Rico Zook, permaculture teacher, and we did some stuff with teacher training in Laos, worked in Cambodia as well as India. So here we are installing a gray water pit, and here's a composting setup here. And then last year I went to Spain. I was studying Catalan vault construction with a builder named Jordi Dominic. Yeah, I learned a lot. I really think the Catalan vault is one of the greatest solutions as a ceiling and roof. It's very durable. This is a very old technique that uses a natural cement. It's actually a magnesium oxide cement. It's a natural form of it. We take the fired clay tiles and we just glue them together in place using strings to guide the work. Yeah, the Catalan vault method is also known as timber vault or Guastavino vault. So this is kind of the top of my list of what I think is the most effective and most durable. I had to get into a lot of oven building over the years, and probably done a dozen cob ovens, very popular thing for people to ask for. Again, this roof here, this is covering this particular oven. And at some point, I did a lot of rocket mass heaters, and here's a repair project, a couple of different repair projects I've done around town. A lot of cob projects eventually need some maintenance, right? So this is both of these are not originally my work, but something that I repaired. Yeah, after all those rocket mass heaters, they're great. Don't get me wrong, rocket mass heaters are awesome, but I realized that the masonry heaters are more efficient, and it's worth the money to get the nicer materials and build it right. So I studied masonry heater construction and did a few projects. And yeah, then we did some floor form installations, some mini ponds, and here's a gray water processing cell that's inside the regenerative home. Yeah, here's a mini rocket mass heater that I built in my tiny house. That was actually version 2. And then I did this workshop in Hawaii one year where we built a rocket mass heater and passive solar panel heated shower and hot tub combined. So it doesn't look like much, but when you're out in the jungle, having a nice hot shower and a nice hot bath is really incredible. And this did all that, and it could be heated by the fire, or if it was a sunny day, it would be already heated just by the sun. And yeah, recently just taking up the Flame and Mind software produced by Dan Winter and Patrick Bate, and we are recording capacitance in architectural spaces, starting to be able to measure and understand the vibrations that will make a space conducive to wellness, longevity, brain development, seed germination, among other things. So this is an important piece. And then recently we've been experimenting with aircrete. Now, I am in no way a promoter of Portland cement. In fact, my entire career has been avoiding using Portland cement as much as possible. But when I heard about aircrete, I realized there's something special here because making a lot out of a little and ending up with a mold and rot-proof material that's also highly insulative and waterproof is pretty valuable. Our current test, here's our foam generator machine. Here I am with Manny and Ian, my assistants for this current workshop, and we're producing some foam. And we have great results. We have some very lightweight Portland cement-based aircrete bricks as a proof of concept. And now we're working on transferring this over to using magnesium oxide cement. The magnesium oxide cement being much more healthy, completely non-toxic, much more ecological, and much stronger. So soon enough, we'll have magnesium aircrete as well. And these are some magnesium oxide with magnesium sulfate bricks that we built recently. And yeah, my current job as a building envelope consultant has been really a blessing. It helped me understand building science, just studying it more in depth. So here I am doing a roof evaluation on a commercial building in downtown Portland. And this other shot is me at a air barrier. It's a whole building air barrier test, okay, where they essentially shut off the entire building and then they add these giant fans into one door and they'll pressurize the building in both directions. They blow in and blow out, and they're testing how much the building leaks. So they're trying to make sure that it's overall it's airtight. The amount of leakage that's allowed depends on the size of the building, right? So this particular type of test, the air barrier test, is used a lot in passive house construction. I'm interested in only the best of the best, appropriate technologies and materials and methods that will fulfill our needs as humans and make for an elegant and really efficient lifestyle that can regenerate ourselves and the earth. So these are some examples. None of these are my work. It's various photos that I take inspiration from. This is the water organizing module from Earthship Bioarchitecture, which is great, works well. This is the gray water cell and black water cells from Earthship. And then here you have the wood gasifier. It's a great tool where you can essentially burn wood chips on a low oxygen environment and create this syngas or wood gas that can be stored or burned. And then biogas, another option. I'm sure you guys have heard of this. It's a great option. Your compost scraps turn into a free flammable gas you can cook with or heat your home with. And this is just a wood boiler, a cooker boiler. So all these are great solutions. They're just examples. Here's another really nice cook stove. I would love to have any of these. A little mini masonry heater. I like that. Small size for a smaller space. Oh, and this is a beautiful little rocket stove designed for heating that was invented and built by my good friend Ray Serino, who's a natural builder out of LA. So yeah, and then, passive solar water collection, passive solar home design. We also have the Sun Pulse engine by Jürgen Kleinwacher. It's a solar concentrator that heats up and is able to run an engine that's a slow pulsing engine. So it's very quiet, it's very efficient. A few more solar concentrators, and this is a thermal storage unit to store energy for later. And that's pretty much it. I mean, we're getting to the point where we can start to understand some of the ancient buildings and how they work with the charge collapse and high dielectric materials to create a high capacitance, this health-giving field around their buildings. Here's the Pyramid of the Sun. in Mexico. This is a temple in Japan with sacred geometry proportions. So we take inspiration from all these things, and remembering the ancestors, there's so much to learn. So we can just study all these old buildings and figure out how to shape our new buildings. Understanding the magnetic lines and all the energies coming out of the earth, the gravity, there's the piezoelectrics, the magnetism, paramagnetism, the electromagnetism, the Hartman and Curry lines, you know, the radon gas and other gases coming out of the ground. You have radioactivity is higher in some locations on the earth, just naturally, you know. Infrared, ultraviolet is different at different locations on the earth. So the capacitance will be different at different locations. There's sounds like inaudible sound, infrasound and ultrasound. All these invisible factors, underground water, the conductivity in the soil, seismic faults. This to me is kind of the cutting edge of what will be shaping architecture and will shape our lives. We need to understand all these invisible things to be in harmony with the earth. Thank you.